This is question number 2 in my foundation series, Why You're Exhausted After Every Meal. Hi, I'm Dr. Kim, the insulin resistance doctor, and I've been in clinical practice for over 40 years. And if you like the content of my videos, please like and subscribe. It really helps my channel. And download your free 1-minute insulin resistance quiz before we get started today. You eat lunch, maybe it was a sandwich or some pasta, or even what you thought was a pretty healthy meal. And within 30 to 45 minutes, you can barely keep your eyes open. Your brain goes foggy, and your focus disappears. You'd give anything for a 20-minute nap, and you've probably just accepted this as normal, as something that happens after eating. But it's not normal, and it's not inevitable. This post-meal crash is your body sending you a signal. And today I'm going to explain exactly what that signal means, why it keeps happening, and what it tells us about what may be going on underneath the surface within your metabolism. This video is based on question number 2 of my free 1-minute insulin resistance quiz. I get tired, foggy, or sleepy after meals, especially carb-heavy ones. The quiz is 10 yes or no questions, and it takes about 1 minute. When you're done taking the quiz, send me an email of your results and your struggles, and I will personally send you what your score means and which lab numbers are worth knowing about in your situation. My email address is in the description below this video. If this is all new to you, hit subscribe. I'm posting new videos every week to help you understand your numbers. Now let's talk about why this is happening. Question number 2 on my quiz says, I get tired, foggy, or sleepy after meals, especially carb-heavy ones. Most people who answer yes to this have lived with it so long, they've stopped questioning it. They schedule their day around it. They reach for coffee, and they push through. But here's what I want you to understand. Your body was not designed to shut down after eating. Food is supposed to give you energy, and when it's doing the opposite, when eating is making you foggy and exhausted, that's a metabolic signal worth paying attention to. And in my 40 years of clinical practice, this symptom, post-meal fatigue and brain fog, is one of the most consistent early signs of insulin resistance that I see. So let me walk you through exactly what's happening in your body when you eat and why it goes wrong in insulin resistance. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, pasta, rice, fruit, anything that breaks down into glucose, your blood sugar rises. That's normal, and it's supposed to happen. In response, your pancreas releases insulin to move that glucose out of the bloodstream and into your blood cells for energy. Again, this is normal physiology. But here's where insulin resistance changes everything. When your cells are resistant to insulin, which is a hormone, the pancreas has to release far more insulin than it should to get the job done. We call this hyperinsulinemia, or chronically elevated insulin. That surge of insulin from the pancreas overreacts, and it drives blood sugar down too far, too fast. Not necessarily into a dangerous low, but into a relative drop that your brain interprets as a crisis. Your brain runs almost exclusively on glucose, and when blood sugar drops rapidly after a meal, even if it's technically still in a normal range, your brain sounds the alarm. Energy to the brain drops and focus drops. Then your body's response is to conserve energy, to slow down, to get foggy, and make you want to stop moving and rest. That's your post-meal crash. It's not laziness, and it's not a character flaw. It's a predictable biological response to a blood sugar roller coaster that insulin resistance is driving. Now let's talk about the cognitive piece specifically, because brain fog after meals is something people often dismiss or attribute to getting older or elevated stress levels in their life or not sleeping well enough. And yes, sleep and stress matter, but if brain fog is reliably happening within an hour or so of eating, especially after carbohydrate-heavy meals, insulin is almost certainly involved. And here's why. Insulin doesn't just affect your muscles and fat cells, it also affects your brain. There are insulin receptors throughout the brain in the areas responsible for memory, focus, and executive function. When insulin signaling is dysregulated peripherally, meaning in the rest of your body, it affects your brain too. And research increasingly shows that the brain can develop its own form of insulin resistance independent of what's happening downstream in the body. And some researchers now refer to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes because the same insulin resistance that drives metabolic disease in the body appears to play a significant role in cognitive decline. I'm not saying post-meal brain fog means you're heading towards Alzheimer's, but what I am saying is the mechanism is worth understanding because it tells us that insulin resistance is not just a weight problem or a blood sugar problem, it's a whole body problem, including your brain. The free 1-minute insulin resistance quiz, question number 2, specifically mentions carb-heavy meals, and that's intentional. Not all meals trigger the same insulin response. Fat and protein meals stimulate very little insulin release. Carbohydrates, especially refined carbohydrates like white bread, pasta, rice, crackers, and sugary drinks, cause the biggest, fastest spikes in blood sugar and therefore the biggest insulin surge. If you crash after a big pasta meal but feel fine after eggs and avocado, that is actually useful diagnostic information. The pattern tells us your body is struggling specifically with glucose from high carbohydrate meal, which points directly towards insulin resistance. Now, some people will say, well, I'll just eat fewer carbs and the problem goes away. And yes, reducing refined carbohydrates in a meal will reduce the crash, but it doesn't fix the underlying insulin resistance problem. It just removes the trigger temporarily. The root problem, the fact that your cells aren't responding properly to insulin, requires a more targeted approach, and it starts with knowing your numbers. The functional medicine side, we check function. And for this symptom specifically, the number I want you to see in a lab report is a fasting blood test called fasting insulin, not fasting glucose. Fasting insulin is its own separate test that measures how your pancreas is working to control your blood sugar, how hard it is working. If fasting insulin is elevated, even with normal blood sugar, it tells us the compensation is already happening and the pancreas is overproducing insulin. The roller coaster after meals is being driven by too much insulin chasing too much glucose. I also want to see a fasting glucose run at the same time because together these two numbers let me calculate what's called HOMA-IR, the most practical clinical measure of insulin resistance we have. Fasting glucose times fasting insulin divided by the number 405 equals your HOMA-IR. A HOMA-IR above 2.0 in the context of these symptoms tells me we need to address insulin resistance directly. And here's the hopeful part. When insulin resistance is addressed, when we bring fasting insulin down through diet, targeted supplements, stress management, and sleep, that post-meal crash often resolves. People describe it as getting their afternoons back and getting their brain back. I've watched it happen over and over again, and it's one of the most rewarding things I see in my clinical practice. If you answered yes to question 2 on the quiz, or if this is ringing true as you listen, I want you to take the full quiz if you haven't already, because post-meal fatigue rarely travels alone. It almost always shows up alongside other symptoms that's on the list. And your total score gives us a much clearer picture of what's likely happening. The quiz is in the description below, and it takes 1 minute to complete. And I respond personally to every score if you send me an email. The email is in the description below this video. If you already know your fasting insulin number, drop it in the comments. I personally read every comment that's in the description below. And let me give you some concrete starting points. First, start paying attention to the pattern. Does the crash happen after every meal or specifically after carb-heavy ones? Does it happen at a consistent time, 30 minutes after eating, or 45 minutes, or even an hour? Tracking the pattern for even 3 or 4 days gives you useful information. Second, at your next doctor's visit, ask for a fasting insulin level alongside your regular fasting glucose. Bring it up specifically in your appointment with your doctor. Write it down so you don't forget to ask while you're in your appointment. Third, take the quiz, because post-meal fatigue is question number 2, but there are other questions that may also apply to you. The more yes answers you have, the more important it is to investigate the insulin piece. Fourth, watch my other videos on this channel, particularly the foundation video, What is Insulin Resistance?, which explains the full picture of why this matters and what's driving it. If you've been crashing after meals for years, if you've built your entire afternoon schedule around needing an afternoon nap, I want you to know that it's not just how your body works, it's a signal. And signals can be investigated. And when we find the right answer and address the root cause, things begin to change. Take the quiz, the link is in the description below, and email me your score. And if you're ready to go deeper and talk through your specific situation, the link to book a 30-minute coaching call is also in the description. If this helped, please hit the subscribe button and give me a like so you don't miss the next one. The next one in the foundation series is question number 3, sugar and carb cravings, specifically in the afternoon or evening. If you've ever felt like you absolutely need something sweet after lunch or dinner, that video is going to explain exactly why, and it connects directly to everything we talked about today. Thank you for watching. I'm Dr. Kim, the Insulin Resistance Doctor. Know your numbers, change your future.